Hi, I'm Mandy, and this is Gus. And I allow Gus to tell me no to writing. Let's talk about it. I got my morning coffee with me, so I can finish drinking that while we talk about this. Every time I post a video of Gus being allowed to say no to writing, when he does say no to writing, I get a lot of questions. I have a lot of people that are very curious about that, how I started, how to implement it, etc. One of the comments I've seen most frequently recently is, how did you train him to do this? And I want you guys to know that this isn't something that he's trained to do. This is something that I've trained myself to do. Horses are always trying to talk to us. They are always sharing their feelings. They are always communicating with us through their behavior. So my job was to just start learning what he was communicating and how he was communicating it with me. I was watching a webinar of a few trainers that were all discussing, I'm sorry. I'm not touching you anymore. Got it. A few years ago, I was watching a webinar with a handful of various trainers discussing some bodywork modality stuff. And one of the biggest takeaways I took from that discussion that they had was someone talking about consent in horses. And now this is a very, people have very, very strong opinions on whether or not horses can consent. That is not what this conversation is about. I am not going to share my opinion. I'm not going to get into, I'm not bothering you at all. But see, there was Gus communicating with me. I'm in your bubble. I know. I'm just talking to the camera. I will move further away. But the key takeaway was that a yes means nothing if no isn't an option. I did not train him to say no. I did not train him to say yes. I trained myself and had to learn what his communication was and how he communicated that with me. How did he express he didn't like something? How did he express that he was interested in something? The question is not, how do I teach my horse how to do this? How do I give my horse this sort of option? I just asked the questions and I allowed him to have his opinion, whatever that was. I invited him to converse with me, to share his feelings and share his opinions. And I do a lot of reward-based training. And what I would do was, regardless of what that answer was, I would reward him for it. I was just looking for him to give me an answer. So early on, that started with just as a simple thing like grooming brushes. I would show him a brush and I would have my low value pellets on me and I would say, are you interested in me using this? And I would watch his face. I would watch his body language. Did he try and move away from it? Did his lips purse, or did his ears pin? Did his ears stay forward? Did his ears kind of go sideways? Horses don't have the ability to say no with their words, but they do have the ability to say no, or I'm not sure, or maybe, or yes, or absolutely yes through their body language. Yeah, I left your bubble. I did. And so all I had to do was ask him questions and then wait for him to answer. And whatever that answer was, I would then reward it. And if that answer was no to a specific brush, I would put it away. If that answer was yes, I would reward and then I would continue brushing. I think people like to make it more complicated than it is. A lot of us are raised with the belief that a horse saying no to things is problematic or dangerous or wrong, or that it will lead to them walking all over you all of the time. And my horse being allowed to say no to riding does not mean that he is free from doing any sort of training, or that he just goes back out to his herd and that's all we do for the day. There are some days where if his behavior is for whatever reason different than usual and he seems like he maybe needs to have a break from training, yes, he can have a day off. He can do nothing. That's not a big deal. But allowing him to say no to specific things does not mean that we don't train. You do not get a free pass of not training horses just because you allow them to say no to things. So maybe being ridden is not on the agenda for how Gus is feeling in his body for whatever reason, but We can still work on some things on the ground, whether that's through play, whether that's through in hand work. If I wanted to work on something specific that was important, like, for example, if we wanted to work on him maybe listening to me when I ask him to pull his head away from grass, right? That maybe is something that we work on instead of doing a ride that day if he's not interested in doing a ride. It's just pivoting to something that he might be interested in doing, but that we can shift and turn into a learning opportunity in a way that is motivating for him. So why do I allow Gus to say no to riding or various other things that are not necessary? Gus knows his body better than I ever will. So what he's feeling in his body, I cannot understand. He cannot say with words. Whatever it is that's going on in his life in the 20 plus hours a day that he exists when I'm not here with him, there are a lot of things that can happen that maybe make riding not a good idea for him, or maybe it's uncomfortable, or maybe, right? Maybe he took a funny step. Maybe his arthritis in his knee hurts because of the way that maybe he flexed it a little bit farther than he wanted to when he went down for a roll or went down for a nap. I mean, the laundry list of things that can be happening within a horse's body, like maybe his teeth are due, maybe his teeth hurt, maybe his neck got tweaked playing with a friend, maybe his feet hurt. For me, Gus saying no to riding is as if I were to come out and grab him and he were to be three-legged lame. Just because I can't see lameness or discomfort doesn't mean it isn't there. And so I lean on the fact that he knows himself better than I know him. And if he expresses discomfort or conflict behaviors around tack or around the ridden process, I'm going to just believe him. And that's really all it is. Just being open to listening to your horse, being open to the idea of believing them when they're trying to tell you something. We like to put our own beliefs and our own practices onto a horse, or what we've been taught. If we've only been taught that a horse pinning its ears when you go to do the girth up is trying to get out of work, you're going to believe that they're just being difficult to try and make your life difficult, when horses don't do that. If a horse is pinning its ears and trying to bite at you when you're doing up the girth, that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it is just trying to get out of whatever it was that you wanted to do with it that day. That is communicating that something is wrong. Does that girth fit properly? Does that girth cause them discomfort? Do they have something going on in their body that makes girthing painful? It pins its ears at you because that's directly correlated to something that you're doing that is causing them discomfort. If you don't cause them discomfort, they don't show conflict behaviors. And so I just had to learn to lean into trusting what he was saying and trying to understand what that meant without putting my own twist or my own past experiences or whatever that was that I was once taught about horse behavior onto him. I want him to be able to share his true feelings with me in the moment and validate those. I don't need to ride a horse that does not want to be ridden. I don't need to fight with a horse to make him do what I want him to do simply because I can. It is very easy to gain compliance with a horse. You can punish them, you can pressure them into doing whatever it is that you want them to. There is a grave misunderstanding people have about that horse is 1,200 pounds. If it didn't want to do something, it wouldn't. There are a lot of horses you watch that flip over and that kick out and that strike out that we punish and force to continue going forward until they explode, right? Because we haven't been listening. Horses get explosive when they're not listened to. And if we don't listen to them when they're quiet, we force them to escalate and scream at us. Which is why you see so many people get to a point where like a horse is rearing and bucking and They can't be ridden before they have the vet out to take radiographs of their spine, when they were more than likely giving subtle signs that something was up in their back for months. But we just ignore them because that's what we've always been told. That if we listen and if we don't do those things, we then encourage those behaviors to continue. When those behaviors are simply a horse trying to communicate with you that something is wrong, and they are pointing you to exactly where that something is wrong, we just have to listen. So that's how I went about introducing it. That's a lot of my beliefs on it. He does say yes way more than he says no. Him being allowed to say no has made him more willing, more engaged, more enthusiastic, more confident, more cooperative, more predictable. And I'm not in the business of trying to tell anyone who does what they do or don't do with their horses who's right and wrong. I don't sit on a pedestal of the way that I work with Gus being the best. It is the best for Gus, and I will stand on that, but I will never tell you guys that what I do is what everyone should be doing. But I do encourage people all of the time to just try. To just try and lean in and learn what a horse might be trying to tell them. To open up a conversation and a back and forth dialogue with a horse. Learning all of the ways that your horse specifically communicates with you. When they pin their ears, when they don't pin their ears, when their mouths purse up. It's about partnership, it's about relationship, and it's about trust. You know, Gus? Was that helpful? I don't know. I hope it was helpful. It's something that's really important to me and has completely transformed the relationship that Gus and I have. And I just wish that everyone could experience that level of understanding with their horse.